Well, good morning and welcome to Sunday, 18th of October edition of Elevenses. What have we got for you this morning? Well, I'll be looking briefly at Tier 2 and what that means for biking here in the capital. The London Congestion Zone news is hot off the press that this could be extended. Polaris have linked up with Zero to use their battery technology, and The Guardian used an article about Triumph as an example of British industry, and the least likely rumour of 2020 so far. And finally, I'll just be looking quickly at how electric clothing actually works, heated clothing. So sit yourself down. I'll be here for the next 20 minutes or so. We're broadcasting live twice a week, Wednesdays and Sundays at 11. You can catch up with the show here on Facebook later, or you can head over to my YouTube channel and see it over there. Okay, on without any further delay. Now, you've probably heard already that London shifted to Tier 2 of the coronavirus precautions, whatever you like to call them, at midnight on Friday. So that meant they applied yesterday as I was out on a training course. Now, I'd like to be able to say that government guidance on what that actually means for travel and work is easy to follow, but quite frankly, I found it pretty damned impenetrable. But here's what I understand it means. The first thing to say is that guidance means that we should all be working from home as much as possible, and we should all be reducing the number of journeys we make where possible. And we're also told not to travel too far outside the area unless it's absolutely necessary. So at the same time, though, meeting outside is still permitted under the rule of 6. So what does that actually mean for motorcycling? Well, from the perspective of working on a bike, let's cover that first of all. It appears, of course, that we can still work. Now, as you probably know by now, I've shifted much of my former face-to-face contact time with trainees online. So I'm doing debriefings on Zoom. That means I can cut down the length of time that I'm out on the road with the trainee. And it basically, the idea of that is so that we don't actually have to go into things like cafes or service areas to do the briefings. So that's how I've worked, and I'm happy that my precautions operate within these Tier 2 restrictions. So basically, I'm sure you're absolutely sick of hearing about COVID by now, but I am still training. What about motorcycles on ride-outs? Well, the guidance appears to be, as I said, to reduce the number of journeys where possible and not to travel too far outside the area in which you live unless absolutely necessary, which would imply that if you are heading out of the Greater London area or any of the other areas which are currently under a Tier 2 lockdown, then ride-outs would presumably not be permitted. If you are thinking of heading into Wales, be aware that the Welsh authorities are actually seeking a restriction on people from the Tier 3 areas even entering the area. Tier 3 basically says that movement is still allowed for work and education, but it's not clear whether that includes non-essential businesses at the moment. I'm assuming that it probably does allow businesses to continue to operate. So presumably motorcycle training can continue, but I'll cross that hurdle when I come to it. But obviously, if you're planning a ride out and you're in a tier 3 area, again, that restriction applies to you not to travel in or out of the tier 3 area. Now, one thing that's fairly obvious is that we all have a pretty difficult winter ahead of us. And for many of us, riding a motorcycle isn't just means of transport, it's actually kind of a therapy to help combat cabin fever. So, do look at the restrictions, do try to understand how they work. I know it's boring hearing about COVID, but I will continue to try to cut through the blather, which is the government press releases on this, and try to make sense of what they actually mean for us on motorcycling. My bit of advertising, if you are thinking about doing some motorcycle training, I'm still operating my one-to-one courses, and of course there are the online coaching sessions which are still available, and you're very much welcome to have a look at those and think about booking them up. Don't forget, of course, there are my regular Better Biking items here on Facebook as well, and the back catalogue, which is ever growing over on www.coffee.com. Okay, what else is in the news? Well, one of the shockers was discovering that the government is considering a condition of extending the London Congestion Charge Zone to agree to a TfL, Transport for London, bailout. Now, basically, Transport for London is financed by a package. It's supposed to be self-financing under the terms and conditions. That money was propped up in the initial lockdown back in March by government bailout. But that cash is due to run out, possibly as early as this weekend, since maintaining the services with reduced passenger numbers, it basically means that TfL, the tubes and the buses, are running at a loss. So the Mayor of London has been in contact with the government to try to work out how TfL could be further supported. And it appears that one of the conditions that the government may be imposing on London is to extend the London Congestion Charge. Now, again, I apologise for this being London-centric news, but hey-ho, we live in the capital. Capital is the biggest town in London. The problem is that at the moment, the congestion zone basically covers the centre of London, where there are relatively few people living. If it is extended, it would go out as far as the north and south circular roads, and it would embrace no less than 3 million people. And that appears to be the condition for this emergency funding. Now, one of the other conditions would be the removal of free travel entitlements currently offered to children and pensioners. So what would this cost? Well, it would basically cost £15 a day if you want to drive a car. Now, public transport does get you into central London. That's basically what it's designed to do. Central London is a hub. Much of the transport system runs in and out. What the transport system doesn't do is run around central London very well. For example, where I live in northwest London, it's almost impossible to get to northeast London by public transport without having to go into the centre of London and make a rather long journey. There are routes available, few and far between. So the result of this would be to extend this charge out to cover these 3 million people and any registered vehicle within the zone. Motorcycles would be exempt from this if the prior rules are applied. Under previous arrangements, anybody living within the congestion zone could get a 90% discount on the charge, but the discount is currently closed to new applicants as part of the government bailout from May. So we could all be charged £15 for driving a vehicle from anywhere. It doesn't matter where you want to go within that congestion zone. it would be £15 a day. Will it happen? Who knows? The London, the mayor's office has basically said that this is an unacceptable condition to be imposed on London. The government basically accuses the mayor's office of playing politics with their bailout. We really don't know what the problem is. The cost of bailing TfL out and keeping London's transport running is a fairly enormous 5.7 billion, and that would apparently secure transport within the capital for 15 to 18 months. So, okay, do we get that or not? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. That is the basically rumour mill, hot off the press, wondering what's going to happen here in London. Right, okay. On another note, electric motorcycles, you probably know that I've been fairly keen on sort of talking up electric motorcycles, and a deal's been done out in the US. Polaris have secured a 10-year exclusive contract to use the battery and the drive technology that Zero motorcycles have developed. Now, Polaris, you probably know, are well known for their snowmobiles and their ATVs, but they are also the parent company of Indian motorcycles. Zero, on the other hand, are the sales leader in the electric motorcycle segment. At least that's what the press release from Polaris says. So the hookup between Polaris / Indian and Zero is quite a significant one. It's not the first electric motorcycle company that Polaris have owned or come to own. They've been buying up various technology segments. They own a company called Global Electric Motor Cars. Global Electric Motor Cars actually make golf buggies, road legal golf carts. So that they were already the America's largest electric vehicle maker, and they continue to sell. In 2013, Polaris acquired Aixam. Now, you probably, again, have never heard of those, but if you travel across to France and you've seen those funny little mini four-wheel cars with a top speed of 50 kph that you see driven on the roads over there, many of those are made by Aixam. So these things are called quadricycles. They're road legal, they're low speed. So it's a European designation. It doesn't apply in the home country of the US, which is where Polaris come from. And the other company that you probably have heard of is Brammo. They basically were an independent electric motorcycle manufacturer. And if you were wondering what happened to them, well, it was a purchase by Polaris. And for a short period, they did actually carry on selling electric motorcycles under the Victory brand as the Victory Impulse TT. But when Victory was scuttled as a brand, the Brammo version of the electric motorcycle disappeared too. So Polaris actually are now sitting on quite a sort of catalogue of motorcycle technology and electric technology, which obviously I suspect have a way forward in their portfolio. And there are rumours that a new Indian with electric power will be released as early as next year. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Least likely rumour of 2020. Well, this one's been doing the rounds recently. Lots of pictures of an up-spec'd CRF 250 rally. Now, the 250 rally is a sort of itself an up-spec version of the CRF 250 sort of off-road bike enduro. But what these statements have claimed is that it could become an Africa Twin 250. Now, if you know anything about the CRF, you'll spot the problem immediately. It's a single-cylinder motorcycle. So calling it an Africa twin is going to be slightly tricky. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to be, looking around that one. Doesn't mean that the motorcycle won't appear, sort of a high spec adventure bike, sort of something along the lines of Yamaha's 700 Tenere, but the name does seem a little bit unlikely. Right, okay, don't forget, you're watching 11s live. We're on Monday, Sundays and Wednesdays at 11, and we're bringing you some fresh news from the motorcycle industry and from motorcycling around the world. So do catch up at 11 o'clock on those days. Right, okay, so a little bit about cold hands, cold feet. Before I sign off today. I know I covered this again a couple of weeks ago, but I'm still seeing people writing and saying I'm buying some new hunky-dory non-electric kit, putting some money into some expensive winter clothing and winter gloves and winter boots and things because it's suddenly got cold in the UK. Well, yeah, okay, we ride bikes, we get cold hands and cold feet. It goes with the territory. It's not surprising. Everything that, is stuck out in a wind blast and our surface area gets chilled, and it's no surprise that hands and feet get cold. So how do we keep warm? Well, as I said a couple of weeks ago, I tried all the solutions. Gloves, handlebar muffs, heated grips, thicker clothing, layers, the works. But the problem is that all those are insulation. Now, if you think about what insulation does, it simply slows down the rate of heat loss. As I suggested, you try to visualize this as the insulation in your loft. You can pile it on, you can put as much up there as you like, and on a cool day, it'll be enough to keep the house warm. But when the day gets really cold outside, you will get heat leak out through the roof. If you turn the heating off and leave a building long enough, it will cool down to the temperature of the outside environment. It's just the fact of life. Insulation cannot prevent heat loss. You can pile on the insulation and slow it down, but eventually the temperature gradient from inside to outside gets so steep that heat goes the other way. So how does heated clothing actually work? Well, the answer is that you're now adding heat to the core. So it's like turning your central heating on. You put the central heating on a really cold day, it warms the entire building up, and you find a balance on the thermostat that maintains the rate of heat loss out through your insulated layers to the rate of production of heat from the central heating, so that you maintain a nice steady temperature. And that's exactly how heated clothing works. You cannot basically beat that temperature gradient except by adding heat. Now, why would you want to do this? Why can't you just layer up? Well, if you're doing a 30-minute journey, it might seem easier just to put some extra clothes on. And, if you're just doing short journeys, that'll be fine. You'll still get chilly, perhaps, but you won't get cold. If you're doing longer journeys, then just like leaving the heating off for days on end, you're going to need to add some heat to warm up again. And that's where the clothing, the heated clothing, comes in over and above the insulated clothing. But the big benefit really is that it saves you having to buy yet another set of clothing. Now, I've got because I'm out on the bike regularly. I work on the bike, obviously, so I've got about 4 or 5 different pairs of gloves. I've got 3 different riding suits. I've got boots for all weathers. But a lot of people can't afford this. But what are they looking to do? They're looking to supplement their existing kit at this time of year, and people start looking at more expensive motorcycle clothing to try to keep warm. So what I'm going to say to you is, don't go that route. Actually look at the heated clothing. You can get heated waistcoats for around £100. Some are rather more expensive. There are a few that are a little bit cheaper. You can get them heated clothing that uses a power link to the bike itself. You just literally screw a couple of terminals onto the battery. You can get heated clothing which has a self-contained battery pack. So, when you go and look at the options for keeping warm, heated clothing is actually a very, very cost-effective way of staying warm. Compared with the price of a heavy winter jacket with insulation built in, and winter gloves and winter boots, it really is a no-brainer. But you have to know about this and how it works and appreciate that it does work. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching. We'll be back on Wednesday with the next show. You've been watching Kevin Williams and ELEVENSES. Thank you indeed again.